You are listening to the Attempt Adventure Podcast, a podcast all about travel, finding adventure every day, and seeking out adventurous ways to make life more interesting. From Bangkok, Thailand, I'm your host, Michael DeRosiers, joined as always by my co-host,
James Barrett from Longmont, Colorado.
James, welcome back to the show, sir. Hope you're doing well.
I am.
All right, James, we got a fantastic episode coming up today, a true adventure to talk about, and I'm so excited. We are going to be joined by Lucy Westlake, adventurer, mountaineer, explorer, really amazing record breaker, I might add.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get to that in a minute. But before we do that, James, we have a few announcements. First of all, guys, I just want to remind you all that if you do like the show, please share it, maybe with your friends, maybe give word of mouth, shout us out to your dentist.
Oh yeah, when he's in there digging around.
Yeah.
Maybe listen to it when you get your root canal done.
That's right. Who else could you share it with, James?
Let me see. Gardeners. How about your therapist? Parole officer.
Yeah, they might like to hear about it. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, but word of mouth definitely helps. And also, guys, if you do enjoy the show, please maybe share us and leave a review on your podcast app of choice. That really helps us grow as well. If you really love the show, you can head on over to our Ko-fi page, kofi.com/attemptadventure, and maybe throw a couple of dollars towards us. That really does help us. It helps us keep the show on the air. I mean, hosting's not free, and it just helps us kind of offset the costs of the website and the RSS feed for the podcast. So, James, before we get into the episode, have you done anything new or adventurous this past week, James?
You know, since we recorded 8 minutes ago, no.
Yeah.
But I am requesting reprieve on another wheel spin so I can have time to complete my first wheel spin.
Okay, yes. So again, if you're just joining us for the first time, we have a game that we play where we are supposed to do something adventurous every episode, something that we've never done before. And if we don't do that, we have created something that we call the Wheel of Penalty, which is a set of challenges that are designed to either get us out of our comfort zone or try something new. James spun that one in the last episode, and he has to learn about geocaching now.
Yep.
You have literally you haven't left this chair. So you've had no time to do that, unless there's a geocache hidden in your apartment, which I doubt. So
I really hope not.
So, James, let's talk about that again next time. Now, I had something new that I did for the last episode, but between then and now, I also have done nothing. And we've done really well this season, James. Neither one of us have had to spin yet, so I'm also going to spin the wheel because it's kind of fun sometimes to have a penalty. So here we go, guys. I'm going to spin the wheel penalty right now.
$50. Come on, $50. One of the penalties is just give the other person $50.
Go to a museum you've never been to before. I think I can complete that. If you will allow it, James, why don't you also let me get back home? I'll be traveling back home to America for Thanksgiving next week. I will either do it in Waco when I get there. I'm sure there's some museums I've never been to in Waco. Or if I have time, I do have like a pretty long layover. If I have time in Istanbul, I might try to do it in Turkey. We'll see. But I'll let you know. I'll do something new. All right, James. Well, it's time to get into our interview. Lucy, welcome to the show. The first question we always ask every guest is, what is your background in adventure?
I'd say my whole life has been a big adventure, and that's how I like it. That's just been the best part about, like when I look back on my childhood, the best part about it was just all the little adventures I had. And they've grown to be big adventures, specifically in mountaineering is really my niche. But yeah, I've had a lot of adventures in different mountains, just traveling. I love traveling, traveled all around the world, running, scuba diving. I've done a lot of things. So yeah, but mountaineering is definitely my niche.
How would you define adventure? What does that word actually mean to you?
To me, adventure can be something that's big or small. And when I first think of adventure, I actually don't think of like a big mountain like Everest or something like that. I think of me as a little kid running around with my friends, like trying to catch frogs and snakes and bring them back as pets, and just like going around and romping in the forest and just doing fun things like that. So adventure to me is something that like puts yourself in something where you're in the unknown. You don't really know what the outcome's going to be. So I think adventure can occur in, everyday life, even in like cities and anywhere can be adventure. Just like having that element of like something unknown where you're out of your comfort zone, I'd say is my definition of adventure.
Great. Well, let's talk about those small adventures. How did you get into adventuring in the very beginning? What sort of sparked that interest and that passion for you?
When I was little, when I talk about, like, my time as, like, a little kid just running around, it's usually been in the summers. So, kind of, like, as soon as, I'd get out of school during the school year, me and my family would go up to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and that was, we have a little cabin up there in the middle of a forest right next to, right on Lake Superior, and there's this little tiny town, that has literally, like, 15 people that live there year round. So it's very remote. That's where I just fell in love with adventure and nature and just exploring like all over that area from a really young age. And that's like what really just like cemented my love for it. And then I started high pointing is how I got into my mountaineering and kind of getting those more intense like big adventures. In the mountains is through high pointing, which is climbing the tallest mountain in every state. So my family started doing that when I was 7 years old, and that was a amazing time just traveling and adventuring all around the country.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the high pointing and just in general about your records. You hold a number of world records. Tell us about those. And I know it all started with your high pointing, correct?
Yes, yeah. So I when I started high pointing, the purpose I never really had the goal of completing all 50, at least from the beginning. It was really just my family loving. We love to travel. We love to road trip. We'd drive literally everywhere. We never flew. We'd always drive everywhere.
That's the best way to travel.
It was. We'd all, like, get in the car and, like, drive up to New England and just go to every state, like, hitting different high points, and climbing them. And eventually, the high points, like, I would realize I'd done, like, 30 high points. At that time, I was still pretty young, so after Mount Rainier, which I did when I was 11, I decided I wanted to become the youngest woman to do all 50 state high points. So, I did that, I completed the 40 lower 48, and became the youngest woman to do that when I was 12,
It's
and
incredible.
then yeah, not even really a woman, it's funny. And then when I was 17, I completed all 50 state high points. So that was one of the records that I hold. And then after that, I kind of when I was, like, around 15 is when I started to do some international mountains where I started to take, my mountaineering internationally and start to do the 7 summits. That was yeah, that was amazing, and I'm still working on that. I've done 5 of the 7, but, I set another record climbing Mount Everest when I was 18 as the youngest American woman to do that.
That's amazing. I think for a lot of people, Mount Everest is like sort of like the
Mhm.
epitome of adventure to people. I know this is probably just such a huge question, but what was it like to stand on Mount Everest?
It was just, like you said, like, the epitome of it all. It's
Yeah.
just such a, like, introspective moment, where you're standing and you're literally on the top of the world. Like, it just feels so surreal, and you can, like, look back on really, like, every single, like, little step that brought you to that one moment in time, and it's just incredible. When I was 7, like, that I decided to start high pointing, and then when I was 11, I decided to keep doing it, and that's something I really loved, and just, like, the passion my passion that kept growing for high pointing and then eventually for doing the 7 summits, it just all kind of like I could look back and be like, "Wow, that's what brought me here." Just that love. It's something that was so special, and it obviously was just absolutely beautiful up there as well. So I was just enjoying taking it all in because yeah, half of, like, why I mountaineer is just because it's so beautiful.
For you, has Everest been your favorite experience, or what has been sort of the best experience that you've had?
Gosh, that's hard to say because every mountain is so different. I love Denali, just because that was kind of almost like my breakout mountain, the mountain where I like really feel like I became like a mountaineer, like a really serious mountaineer, because that was like the first very long expedition I did where you're carrying all your gear with you, climbing fixed lines, using some technical gear like an ascender. So that was just a really special mountain for me and will always hold a special place in my heart because it's actually the first mountain I failed on as well,
Really?
that I didn't
Okay.
reach the summit the first time. So when I was 13, I went to Denali and it was a very difficult experience. I was definitely not prepared for it. That was like the definition of adventure right there is going into the unknown
Yeah.
somewhere I had like no clue what I was getting myself into. But Denali was kind of that mountain where I really, like, found my true love for mountaineering, not just, like, pushing for only the summit, like, wasn't I realized it wasn't just about that. It was about the whole journey, the whole experience, and the adventure, just, like, pushing yourself and seeing
Yeah.
what your body could do.
Do you think the failure was part of that? Like that sort of ended up pushing you even further?
Definitely. I don't think I really thought about, like, why I was climbing, especially before I failed. I was just like, "Oh, this is cool because I get to the top of every mountain and I'm, like, good at it." And it's like, when you're little, it's just, like, fun to be good at something, you know? So I, like, had that just like, "Oh, I'm just good at this." But then when I failed on Denali, I was like, "Wow," like, at first I was like, "I don't think I wanna do this anymore." Like, I gave everything I could. I was 21 days on the mountain, and every single day was, like, such a struggle for me. I was 13 years old, like, carrying 100 pounds between my backpack and the sled behind me, going up a mountain. It was just crazy, especially when I look back on it, like, being, like, 20 now, I'm like, "I don't know how I did that at 13." What made us turn around was, like, an accident in another party, actually,
Oh
and
no.
then so it was, like, something super uncontrollable. So I was like, "Man, like, I didn't even get a chance to try for the summit." I was like, "I don't think I wanna do this, it's just too uncontrollable." Like, I wanted something that I could really, like, predict the outcome almost. And
Mhm.
then I realized after a year of, like, being away from the mountains, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I miss it so much." Like, I miss that feeling of almost, like, being out of control and not really, like, knowing what your next day is gonna hold, because that's not something you get a lot of the times in regular day life. Like, it's something that's so unique to the mountains. Like, I love that part about it. So that's what brought me back, and that's when I really fell in love with climbing.
So, but looking back at 12 years old, I mean, that's really incredible to do that. And you must have
Mhm.
had a lot of support from your family.
Oh, yeah, they were. I mean, just, like, the logistical planning of going to these mountains, like,
Oh, yeah.
traveling around the US in a car or, when you go international, flying and getting there, it's time consuming, it's expensive, it's really difficult. So I owe them, like, everything because they supported me every step of the way. They really made it like a family adventure high pointing. Like, they knew I loved it, and they were like, well, especially my dad with high pointing. We did every single high point, the 2 of us.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah, it was amazing, and it's not something like, he enjoyed it, of course, like, um, liked it, but it wasn't something that, like, he would just have done on his own, you know? Like,
Right.
he was
Sure.
doing it to support me, because he knew I loved it so much. So, like, yeah, I think, like, in any person that's, like, kind of pursuing something at, like, a high level, there has to be that support system, especially when you're in a sport that is so unpredictable and just,
Yeah.
like, yeah, like, when you never know what's gonna happen, you have to have that support system to really keep you grounded and confident.
I'm sure it must have been a bonding experience too. I'm sure you guys got to grow a lot closer together through that.
Yeah, definitely.
What is your next sort of big goal now that you've achieved Mount Everest? What's on your radar?
Well, when I was first doing Everest, that was part of, a bigger goal for me to do the Explorers Grand Slam, which is climbing the 7 summits and then also skiing to the North and South Poles. So that was the plan, and it's still, something I really wanna do, but
Mhm.
it's kind of been put on hold because I've done 5 of the 7 summits, and then the 2 other ones I have to do, one's in Papua New Guinea, which is the tallest one in called Carson's Pyramid, the tallest one in Oceania,
Okay.
and that is unfortunately been closed for a few years because of, a civil war going on. So that is unavailable at this point. Some things you're just not gonna be able to. And then, going to the North Pole, unfortunately, is also closed because of the Russia-Ukraine war because you have to
Right.
go through
Sure.
Russia. And then the South Pole is, the South Pole slash, like, Antarctica's tallest mountain, Mount Vincent. That's kind of in one, expedition since they're on the same continent. And that one is just so expensive that I've been applying for grants and funding. So I'm just kind of waiting for that part to come through. So hoping that'll be a reality at some point soon. But yeah, that's just a very, very expensive expedition. So those are kind of like all things I can't really control. So I was like, well, I don't want to just not climb mountains because of all of these things. So this past summer, I actually went to K2, which is, one of the most dangerous mountains in the world.
It's the second tallest mountain, right? After Mount Everest?
It is the second tallest mountain, yes, and it's one of the hardest mountains in the world to climb. It's definitely a step up from Everest. It's very steep, very unpredictable, and I just thought, I wanna further my mountaineering skills in some way, and I thought that would be a good next step after Everest. So I went there last summer, and it was amazing. It really was. I definitely just improved my mountaineering skills a lot, and learned so much. And I met a lot of people. The mountaineering community is you find a lot of like-minded people, in that community. And on K2, that was I felt like I kind of became a lot more part of that community from that mountain. So it was really awesome. So I had an amazing experience, but unfortunately I didn't summit because I was in an avalanche on summit day.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was very scary. It was. People if anyone's in the mountaineering world, they probably know like the events around K2 this summer were super controversial. And have caused a lot of ripples in the mountaineering world just because a lot of policies are not the best. There's not a lot of regulation on some mountains like K2. So a man ended up dying because of that, and a lot of people ended up walking by, and it was just a very controversial time. So yeah, but it was an amazing experience for me, just like being able to be around some of the best mountaineers in the world, be on one of the hardest mountains to climb. So that was all in the past. It's a very long answer to your question. But in the future, I don't know exactly what mountain I'm going to do next. I'm hoping that one of the seven summits, one of those will be a possibility. But if not, I'm going to continue to climb, whatever mountains are available. And I'm actually looking at guiding, getting more into the guiding side. It's something that I kind of found a passion for recently, but I love like teaching people about the mountaineering world and like having them have a really good first experience or first steps into it because it's
Right.
a place that's so amazing. So this summer I might become a guide, and I'm actually going to Ecuador for a month, start in a week from now, to further like my rock climbing skills. I'm really gonna focus on that aspect because that's not something I've done a lot of training in. So that's kind of what's
Awesome.
next on my radar.
That is super cool. Wow. Yeah, guiding would be really fun. And that first experience is probably so important, right? If somebody has a good
Yes.
first experience, they're going to want to come back. You mentioned the avalanche, and that was actually one of my next questions was about some of the scary or dangerous experiences that you've run into.
Yeah, when you kind of step into the sport of mountaineering, at least at a like high serious level,
Yeah.
there's just a lot of risks that come with that. And there's risks with any adventure because it is like defined by that unknown aspect. And that can vary from, I'm not sure like if I'm gonna be uncomfortable, like if it's, gonna rain while I'm camping type of thing, or something unpredictable like I might lose my life doing this. And, climbing really serious mountains like Everest and K2, it's definitely more of the, I might lose my life doing this. Every mountaineer, I think, has to come to terms with that and
Mhm.
decide for themselves, like, whether this is a sport that they really wanna do, because you can love it, but, like, you have to be willing to take those risks, and you can be as safe as you can, like, take all the precautions, and still, like, an avalanche could come at any time, so that's just something that you really can't control at all, and it is scary sometimes, for sure, like, the scariest moment I've had in the mountains is definitely, being on the avalanche in K2. It was this big white cloud. I just, like, looked up and saw it coming towards me, and, you don't know if that's gonna bury you, if there's gonna be, like, snow chunks that are in that, so luckily, it was not a big one, so it only buried us up to, like, mid-thigh, but if it was bigger, it it could have killed us. Some things are just, like, you have to be smart and know when to turn around, which is difficult because, you put a lot of time and energy and effort to reach your goal, but you have to value your life highly for sure. So it's difficult, but I do really just have, like, a peace when I'm up there, and I think part of that is because I'm, like, a really strong Christian, so I kind of,
Mhm.
like, trust that, like, God has me in his hand, but there's people that obviously aren't, and they still do the same thing. So it's just, like, you have to find somewhere to put your trust, you know? You gotta, like, have something where you're reassured because it is a scary situation up there. And that's where you learn most when you're, like, in those situations where you don't know what's gonna happen, and it's just, like, you and your instincts and whatever trust you have.
How do you know how to react in a situation like that when something goes wrong?
A lot of it when you're actually in the situation is just pure instinct,
Mhm.
because, like, it's that fight or flight or freeze type of
Yeah.
response. So, but like really what should happen is like you have the training to know what to
Right.
do. So that's like the ideal, but then there's like the real of like, you're probably gonna do one of those three things. But yeah, and actually K2 really kind of opened my eyes because I've never really done like a lot of training with mountaineering. Like I've climbed since I was 7 years old. Like at first like hikes, and then when I was like 11, learning how to use ice axe and crampons. My skills have kind of built through experience in the mountains that I've been doing for a long time, and I do feel really confident in those. But I realized on K2, like I've never taken like an avalanche course, or something like that. Like I've never done like a medical course. And when I saw like the accidents that happen up there
Mhm.
and how maybe no one that knows what to do in those situations, at least like in the vicinity, that are around those accidents, and I was like, "Wow, like, this needs to be a priority." So, I feel like, oh, there's kind of like a gap of what you're doing and, like, the skill. So that's why I recently have been like I'm signed up for, like, an avalanche course. 2 months ago, got my wilderness first responder, so, like, a medical course. I'm like, "Okay, now that I've seen these accidents happening," and I'm like, I know this is a reality and that a lot of people don't know how to react in those situations. Like, it is just based off of instinct. Okay, I need to get the skills to be able to actually, like, know what to do in those situations. So, that's something that I've kind of realized recently is, like, not something that's there yet in the mountaineering world that needs to be there.
So, besides scary or dangerous situations, what are just some of the most memorable things that have happened that really stand out to you?
Well, when I first think of mountaineering, I just think of the amazing, there's, like, kind of this photo reel almost in my mind of just, like, the amazing, like, beautiful moments, like the sunrises and the sunsets up there because those are just they're unreal. There's no photo that can capture it. I mean, now with the technology these days, maybe there is, but nothing that I can do with my iPhone. So just the beauty up there is just so unreal, and to be in that moment. Some specific stories, like, just being in a tent for, like, a 3 or 4 weeks with someone
Yeah.
is is such an experience that you'd really never get other than mountaineering. I remember with my dad being, like, a teenage girl in the tent, we'd argue, like, all the time. It was so funny, like,
Right.
I don't know how we didn't kill each other. There's so many good memories up there of just, like, funny moments. Oh my gosh, like, we'd play I remember on Denali, we were stuck in our tent for this is the longest I've ever been stuck in a tent, but we were stuck in a tent for a week when I was on Denali when I was 13.
Because of the weather?
Yeah, just snowed in.
Wow.
And it was yeah, it was crazy, but, like, the whole time we were playing, cards literally 24/7. And, like, we were just I that's where I first learned how to shuffle cards. I'm now very good at shuffling cards and, like, stuff like that. And the community, like, you really get close with people. It's crazy, and I think that's the main takeaway for me, like, being at K2 too, I was stuck at base camp for
Mhm.
nearly a month just because the weather conditions were so bad, and I just got to know some amazing people, like, the person I'm going to with, in Ecuador, I just met him on K2 base camp, and he was just amazing and, like, hit it off with him. The community I remember walking into to a camp on Denali one time, and this guy was, like, cooking a hot dog and just gave me one, and,
Wow.
it's, like, stuff like that, that it's just like, wow, like, everyone kinda looks out for each other up there, and obviously, it's, like, everyone's, like, different, but, like, it's just such a cool place to be, where everyone just appreciates the same things, and loves to just push themselves out of their comfort zone and knows everyone's there for the same reasons. So, yeah, I just say, like, those are kind of the main, like, highlights in my mind when I think of mountaineering.
So, if somebody wants to get into this field of adventure, how can someone get started?
Well, climbing mountains is definitely something like a skill that I think you have to like build up over time. I mean, anything kind of is, but like just starting kind of small, like doing like a hike or two, like if you've never done it, or like camping for a few days, and then kind of building from there. It depends what type of climbing you want to do, like whether you want to rock climb or like what I do is like kind of like high alpine mountaineering. So with that, really when you get into it, you want to start learning skills like how to use an ice axe and crampons and things like that. And the mountain that I learned on was Mount Rainier, and that's like the perfect mountain to learn all that on. So like hiring a guide to really teach you all the skills and like walk you through step by step. There's some amazing guides out there, and I've been blessed to have some great training just on the mountains. And then honestly, just the main thing is just putting in the time and like the effort to go to these mountains and to really like go all in and be mentally prepared to really push yourself.
Yeah.
And the technical side is a huge part of it, like learning all those skills. But after that, it's really just mental. There's definitely like the money barrier as well. That's something that's a real issue in the mountaineering world. So that's something that's super difficult. But there's definitely like scholarships and grants out there for it. So a company or they're a nonprofit. They have a company and then also nonprofit side, and
Hmm.
that I'm like involved in is called the All Summit Scholarship Foundation, and they provide scholarships for women and girls to get into the mountaineering world. They provide lessons and then also like the lessons while you're actually climbing a mountain. So getting that like real life experience. And I actually started a scholarship under them and like had the privilege to like guide these girls up a mountain and teach them those skills, and it was amazing. After you like kind of get that training in, like that hiking and like experience with camping and things like that, like doing something like a mountain like that where you really get that glacier training
Hmm.
is key. And then after that, eventually you can transition away from guiding and you can actually go by yourself. A good amount of mountains, me and my dad, when we were both kind of unexperienced and didn't know
Hmm.
how to do it ourselves, especially when you're like new to the terrain, we got a guide to take us. But then, eventually, like if you kind of get into the community and get to know people and you maybe like make friends with other people that have done these mountains, you can really go unguided once you have that base of skills. And that makes it a lot less expensive, a lot more like personal if you just like going with friends. Getting into that community is really helpful and then going from there.
You mentioned the scholarship for women and girls, and I think that's so important. One of the problems that we've come up against in this podcast is we want to meet people from lots of different fields, and we've kind of found that adventure is very much kind of male dominated in a lot of ways, and that's actually
Mhm.
one of the reasons we were so excited to have you on the show as well. And I think it's important to kind of challenge that, and make it so that adventure can be for everyone.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely a barrier I've seen in the mountains, is that gender gap and an age gap too. Like young people aren't a big demographic, and there's reasons for that, but they like they're not good enough. If you have the drive, if you have the willingness to be there, like if you have the love to mountaineer, anyone should be able to be in the mountains, and anyone can. I try to use my story as like a testament. Like if a 13-year-old girl can climb Denali, like anyone
Yeah,
should be able to do it.
yeah, yeah.
We can't put labels on people or just assume, because you're young or you're a woman or something like that, you can't do it.
Well, you mentioned your other adventures, so you're not just into mountaineering. What
Mhm.
other kind of big adventures do you love, and what kind of things are you looking forward to with those?
Yeah, I mean, I just look for like any opportunity for adventure I can, and I try to any opportunity that presents itself to me, I try to say yes to.
Mm.
Like this Ecuador adventure I'm going on in a week, it just kind of popped up within a month, like in the past few weeks, and I was like, yes, like why not? That sounds amazing. So I
Right.
think just really keeping your mind open to any kind of adventure that comes your way is super important. So that's something that has that has allowed me to do a lot of things. So I've traveled to many different places. Africa is I went to Uganda and Kenya, and I actually lived there for like 7 weeks by myself when I graduated from high school semester
Wow.
early. So that was a huge adventure. That was one of the biggest adventures for me, just because the culture is so different over there. Like the lifestyle. I was in a very rural village in the Sharangani Hills, running with this group of runners there and high school students, and there was like frogs in my toilet and spiders in my
Right.
shower.
Oh my gosh.
It was so out of my comfort zone. But it
Yeah.
was just like looking back, I grew so much from that experience. Like I wouldn't be the person I am today without it.
Yeah.
Beforehand, I was like, I don't know what this is gonna be like. I'm so unprepared, but I'm just gonna say yes to it and see what happens. And I'm so glad I did. And then yeah, just like my trip to Everest in Nepal, like that traveling, I really traveled. Like traveling is kind of like centered around mountaineering. So I've traveled to Nepal to climb Everest, traveled to Pakistan to climb K2. I've been like to Russia to climb at Mount Everest and things like that. So it's been amazing. And I lived in Mexico for a year when I was little, when I was 5 and 6, and went to school down there. And that really just kind of opened my mind up at a young age to seeing like different cultures and it really experiencing them.
Mhm.
Because that's one of the biggest adventures you can have is just being somewhere completely new, maybe you especially when you don't know the language or something like that. Like, that is more out of your comfort zone maybe than you'll ever be. So that's been amazing, but I mean, I love skiing, I love snowboarding, I love scuba diving. I've done that a few times. I was scuba certified actually in Mexico. So yeah, I mean, mountain biking. There's pretty much like any like adrenaline sport that's like adventurous I have done and I love. I mean, there's only so much time and energy in a day, right? So like you can't do everything, but kind of being just like seeing what comes up and seeing what you're called to, and what fits into your lifestyle where you are at the current time. Just trying to like kind of it doesn't have to be something big, like taking a trip to somewhere that you wouldn't go typically. Like maybe
Mhm.
not just going to like the beach resort in Mexico, but like going into the city or going into like seeing what the town's like. Just
Right.
like small changes like that can be a big source of adventure and really change your life and how you view the world.
Yeah, I think that's such a great piece of advice. Take the opportunities that show up and try it out. Well, and running. I know you really enjoy running. How can running be an adventure?
Gosh, running, especially it depends what type of running too, but especially my favorite type of running is trail running. And trail running is such an adventure. I've done that since I was little and I just love it. I love to go somewhere new, and this could be trail running or not, but go somewhere new and explore the area through running. You get into like the streets, you get into like
Mhm.
places that you really wouldn't, and seeing like it's so much more personal than like driving through a town because
Mhm.
you like just see everything like a pedestrian, walking is great, but it takes a long time, so when you're
Yeah,
running you see
yeah.
so much more. So I remember like being in Italy and I was like my phone didn't have any like Wi-Fi or internet and I was just running and I ended up in a completely different town and I was so lost, but it was like it was so fun. That was like the best run of my life and I
Wow.
ended up getting back to the right spot and actually finding my dad again, so that was nice.
I'm a big supporter of getting lost. I just
Yeah.
love wandering around cities whenever I go somewhere new. I mean, as long as it's obviously safe, as long as you're in a safe area.
Mhm.
I think it's great. I've been living in Bangkok for 10 years. I still get lost here sometimes when I'm just walking around, and it's always amazing. You just always run into something just, new and maybe even bizarre, and it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, need to get lost more often. I so agree. And I think running, like, also you explore a lot of yourself when you run, especially you really like find out your mental like limitations because running is such like it's just you and your mind out there, you know? It's
Yeah.
like there's no one else, there's nothing else. It's just like what you tell yourself. That can be it, just exploring that, not really knowing what you're capable of, but just finding it out day at a time.
So, well, beyond your adventure goals, what are your just big life goals? Because you're still in university now, correct? What are your next big life goals?
I try to make it as much about adventure as I can.
Yeah.
But, there is, some serious life stuff that goes on as well, unfortunately. But no, I'm in, my 2nd year at U the University of Southern California in LA,
Nice.
and I took this semester off. I was going to be in a reality TV show, but
Oh,
unfortunately that
wow.
fell through it was called Race to Survive, so
Okay, cool.
it's really cool, and me and my partner were one of the last, like, teams that were knocked out at the very end, so I
Ah,
was
okay.
so I know so I took the semester off and everything, like, I was like, "I'm gonna at least, like, see if this happens and, like, go all in," but
Yeah.
unfortunately it didn't, but it's been, again, an amazing semester off. Now I get to go to Ecuador and things that
Yeah.
I would
That's
never get
awesome.
to do if I was in school right now.
Right.
So but what's next is going back to school in January,
Mhm.
and so that'll be fun to go back. I am looking forward to it. I do miss like all my friends there and just like I do miss like the learning aspect of it.
Mhm.
I realized I do really love learning.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go back there and I run also at the University of Southern California. So go back to the track season and
Cool.
push myself there. And yeah, I'm studying public policy. So I'm hoping to get my degree in that. And I'm really passionate about the world water and sanitation crisis. That's something that I've been passionate about ever since going to Africa for the first time when I was 12. And it just really changed my life seeing people that don't have access to water like I do.
It's something we just take for granted.
Yes, it so is. So just seeing that, I was like, I just knew like this is what I want to do with my life is to help people with that. So I'm going to go into the policy side
Amazing. Yeah.
of water and sanitation. So I'm
So
really
cool.
excited to get my degree in that. So, and then for after that to hopefully use it to help people. So one of my dreams actually recently is to go to Nepal. And when you like go to Everest, you trek through for like 10 days, you trek through all these different villages and they're so like small and rural and a lot of them really struggle with water issues. One of my dreams is to like go and like be able to go through and test all the water of different villages and then like
Wow.
get them what they need to actually have safe water to drink.
That is
So
super cool.
that's one of my dreams that I hope happens someday. But yeah, doing stuff like that, traveling, adventure, like it so coincides with just helping people when you go to these places, you know, it's something that anyone can do.
That's really cool. Well, in the future, if the podcast can ever help bring awareness to anything like that, just let me know. Shoot me an email, and we'll definitely talk about that on the show for sure. I guess the last thing I wanted to ask is beyond, I've already asked how can people get started in mountain climbing, but how can just people find adventure in their own lives? Just a little bit more adventure, a little bit more excitement in their day-to-day lives.
I'd say that the biggest part to finding adventure is just starting small and just seeing where your passion lies because adventure can really be found so many areas of your life. It can be found through travel or getting out in nature in some way. Because I think that, you know, like a lot of our life is so controlled. Like
Mm-hmm.
every like invention and stuff is just to make it more comfortable and more controlled. But having that like really like wild and unknown part of life is something that I think humans
Yeah.
it's so good for like the human spirit and just good for everyone. So I found that most definitely in nature. That's where I've always kind of sought adventure. So whether it's scuba diving or mountain
Mm-hmm.
biking, running, it like you could get into nature in so many ways, camping, hiking.
Yeah.
But I'd say that that is the best way that I found is to do those things and see where it leads, like see which one really speaks to you. And
Mm-hmm.
then as you kind of do that more, like make it a habit that you really build into your lifestyle. And once you get that habit down, you're gonna become, you know, you're gonna become good at it. And that's when you can really start pushing yourself and finding that kind of getting out of your comfort zone aspect of it,
Yeah.
which is like the basis of adventure.
Well, Lucy, thank you so much for coming on the show. If people want to follow you, if they want to catch up with your adventures and see what you're up to, where can people find all that information?
The platform that I'm most active on, is definitely Instagram. So, What's Next Lucy on that, and Facebook as well, is just Lucy Westlake. So those are 2 platforms for sure, and then I post some, like, kind of longer expedition, like, kind of run-throughs on YouTube, and that's just Lucy Westlake. And then I also have a TikTok that I'm occasionally active on, but definitely Instagram is the best, and both those are What's Next Lucy.
All right. And we will, of course, have links to all of that in the show notes and in the podcast episode as well. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. It has been so much fun to talk to you. Very inspiring.
Of course. Thanks for having me. I hope the listeners all like loved it and are very inspired to get out into nature and enjoy their adventure because it's the best part of life.
James, at 12 years old, what was the most adventurous thing you'd ever done?
Oh man. I believe I caught Zapdos in like Pokemon Red. Probably something like that. I not a whole lot.
Yeah.
I don't remember being 12 really. Yeah, I'd been camping a couple times with like Cub Scouts.
Yeah. Isn't that weird, James? They say that you start forming memories when you're like 5, but I can barely remember like middle school.
I remember like random things, like little bits and pieces, sort of here and there. But
Mm-hmm.
overall, no, I don't.
I think my most profound memories of middle school were Mr. Dixon, the Texas history
Mm,
teacher. Remember him?
mm-hmm.
He had a
I
tattoo of
do.
Texas on his arm.
Of course he
He
did.
loved the state.
He sure did. That man.
He would let us play the radio in class. His favorite song was
Hmm.
My Girl. And at any time, if My Girl ever came on the radio, he would give us 7 points on whatever we were doing.
And so I don't know if you guys ever did it, but we would have someone try and go like to the bathroom
Oh,
and
yeah.
call
And
in.
call in. Yeah, we totally tried that all the time. We never
Yeah,
got
yeah, yeah.
through, but we always tried.
Yeah, it's like during a quiz, like or a test.
And he knew, and he did not care.
No,
He
no.
cared about one thing
Text.
Texas.
Texas, and I believe he was like the volleyball coach.
Was he? Yeah, I forgot what he coached.
I don't know. I forget what he coached.
I feel like he was more passionate about Texas history than he was about
Oh,
sports.
100%. 100%, man.
Other than Coach Dixon.
I remember like random things like from here and there, but I can't like recall a whole lot.
Yeah.
Honestly, like the last 10 years is probably a pretty solid thing, but it all kind of runs together.
And I think part of that is because I didn't live a very adventurous life, especially at that point.
No, my life was pretty dull.
Yeah. So imagine Lucy climbing mountains. I mean, I'm sure that hitting the highest peak in every state is something that you'll always remember.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, even at 20 years old, which is how old she is now, the most adventurous thing I'd ever done was like gone to summer camp.
Michael, I turned 31 in December. That's already kind of messing with me. I still haven't done like a 100th of the things. Like I've been to Thailand to see you. That's the most it gets.
You know what? One thing that we talked about is that how she's just trying to make sure that everyone knows that adventure is attainable for everyone. And I really appreciated that because that is absolutely the philosophy of this show, right? That adventure doesn't have to be something that's really difficult to do or really expensive to do, or that you have limitations, physical limitations or anything. It's something that absolutely everyone can get out and do in some way or another.
Oh, yeah. You know, Michael, you and I at least I do, I still kind of put that, like what she's doing kind of like up on this pedestal of like, that's
sure.
the real deal. But the philosophy of the show has always been that like no one thing is greater than another. It's all circumstantial and it's all relative. You know, for me, while that sounds amazing, I can't legitimately say like I want to do it. You know what I mean? I want to have had the experience, but I don't necessarily want to like do. It's just like I want to have been bitten by a shark. Like,
okay,
I don't want to get bit by a shark, but I want to be able to say that I have.
To have had the experience, the story. You want the story. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, I guess the answer to that is just do the thing you want the story of. To do something like she's doing takes a lot. It takes a lot of training. It takes a lot of grit. It just takes
mental fortitude
that I just don't got. You know, I break. I need like caffeine and my special pillow. It's just amazing. And I can't even.
I was very excited to have her on the show because something that you and I have talked about a lot is how the average adventurer is just like a 30-year-old upper middle class white male, right?
Yes.
And she's
someone
trying to
who can afford
that.
to just not
right.
do a job.
Which, besides for the rich part, the ironic thing is that you and I fit the stereotype of adventurers, and we are awful at it.
We're not good.
We host a podcast about it, and we're terrible adventurers. I mean,
oh yeah.
No, but seriously, really great interview, very inspirational, kind of makes me want to get out and get back in nature and do more hiking. You know, I went on that big adventure earlier this year with Carl, where we went hiking to the mountain in Thailand. That was great. I had such a great time, but life's gotten busy and I haven't really been able to get out into nature as much as I want since then. And you know, this episode made me want to think, I need to get back out there. I need to get back out.
Yeah.
There's so much to see just in Thailand, even, much less in the whole world.
You know, I'm bad about that too. I'm bad about living in a place that has access to these things and just sort of not doing them because life gets busy. And I feel like that's also very relatable to a lot of people.
Yeah, I wish I was like independently wealthy, but alas.
Right. I buy a scratch off every once in a while and it never works.
I won $2 on one time. So I went back and I bought 2 tickets and I lost on both of them. So I broke even. No, I didn't. I ended up negative.
Yeah, negative $2. I won $5 on a scratch off once, but I bought it in a gas station in New Mexico and didn't scratch it off till I got home because I assumed I was going to lose.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I wasn't going to drive back to New Mexico to redeem a
$5 ticket. Yeah, no, I don't do scratches. I don't play the lottery. It's just not worth it for me. I know I'm not going to win.
No. I'll buy a $1 scratcher every twice a year just to see. You never know.
Yeah. A couple of years ago, I don't know, they still do this where the state of Texas was always like pushing lottery tickets as like a Christmas present for people.
Yeah, they do. And I'm like, yeah, here's your Christmas present of like, maybe you'll get rich, but most likely it's nothing.
A $2 scratch off. It's like the cheapest, like, if somebody genuinely gave me a lottery ticket, like not just like a hey, here's a lottery ticket for Christmas, but if that was like my real Christmas present,
like a stocking stuffers, I'd be down.
Like, oh great, you went to Texaco. Not, thanks.
But what if, like, think about it this way? What if, like, so Michael, you have siblings, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why I said it like that. I
It's
know
like,
you
yes,
do.
you know them.
um, could you imagine, like, if your parents got you all a lottery ticket and only one of you won?
It would be that'd be awful.
Could you imagine if you're sitting there and you're like, oh, I get bust, you're laughing like, oh, see, it's nothing, and then Kyle's like, I won $1 million,
I'd
and
be
it's
so
just
mad.
like,
I would be so mad. I would, if I won, I would just lie. I'd be like,
I
oh
would
yeah, I
leave,
lost as well. It's like put it in my
pocket it.
pocket.
I would just leave Christmas. I'd just be like, you know what? I don't want to deal with this.
I'm out of here.
It would ruin Christmas.
It
I
would.
don't care how close your family is.
Even if you won, it would ruin Christmas.
Yeah. I would sneak it though. I'd be like, no, I lost. Dang it. Ha, ha,
Just
ha.
never tell anyone.
Pocket it.
If you win the
Just
lottery,
never
just
tell
never
anyone.
tell anyone.
Oh
Ever.
yeah. Be like that one guy that wore like a ski mask and gloves to go pick it up because he didn't want his people to know. Brilliant. Anyway, we're going on a tangent. That was a great interview. Super awesome.
I don't know. James and I, we struggle when we record more than one episode in a day. We lose the plot a little bit.
Yeah.
But we are not the main part of this episode. That's Lucy. So we're just
Thank
here.
goodness.
We're just here also. All right. No, but seriously, Lucy, it was a fantastic episode. And next time you're on a big adventure, next time you want to come back on and share your experiences, just let us know. You're always welcome to do so. And of course, we have links to all of her social media and all of her adventures in the show notes and on the website at attemptadventure.com as well. Well, James, it's now time for our favorite segment, Adventures in the News. Today it's my turn, and I just want to shout out a new project that is coming out soon by the guy that inspired it all, Alistair Humphreys. He's the one that his whole concept of micro adventures is what inspired us to create this show in the first place. And during COVID, he started a project where he called it something like the One Map Challenge. The idea was to explore every inch of his neighborhood in just like a one area map. His new book is called Local, A Year of Exploring a Single Map. So it's all about getting out and finding those little nooks and crannies in your own neighborhood that you probably just never saw before, right? So he would set out on foot every day, wandering, exploring. So I'm just going to read the blurb from the book here. After years of cycling continents, rowing oceans, and trekking across deserts and ice caps, adventurer Alistair Humphreys turns his eye closer to home by asking, is a single map enough exploration? Outside Alistair's front door lies an unassuming landscape marked by the glow of city lights and the hum of busy roads. The Ordnance Survey map he lives on shows 20 square kilometers crisscrossed with motorways, train tracks, towns, villages, and intensely managed farmland. Alistair spends a year exploring what surprises are waiting for him on this single map. What wilderness and curiosities are we missing closer to home? What are we not aware of? Can we put nearby nature into everyday lives? To think globally, but act locally. So he blogged about it throughout the year as well, and he's turned all his blog posts into this new book, which is coming out this Christmas time. So it's a good gift for the adventurer in your life for sure. Good gift. But it's a great idea, and I wish I had thought of something like that during COVID for myself, because I was really stuck inside a lot. And that's something we've talked about too, trying to look at your local area in a new light. And we overlook our own areas a lot of the times.
Yeah, we definitely do. And I know I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was awesome.
All right, folks. Well, if you enjoyed the show today, don't forget to subscribe and please consider giving us a review on your podcast app of choice. Maybe a 5-star review if you're feeling generous. And if you aren't, maybe still a 5-star review with some constructive criticism. That'd be fine. It really helps us out.
As long as it's 5 stars. Okay.
Definitely. You can find more Attempt Adventure content on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, where we are Attempt Adventure. So guys, thanks again for listening. Hope you enjoyed the show. And until next time,
keep adventuring.